Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome back to Nonprofit Enthusiast Live. I'm your host, Lashina Williams, and so excited to be back with you all as we continue the conversation on crafting nonprofit programs. Today, we have a very special guest, and I'm just so excited for this conversation. We have Adlyn Maldonado, and I'm going to bring her up, and you'll learn a little bit more why I'm so excited for this conversation today. And I'm sorry, Addie. I always call you Addie, so I'm Addie. I'm so glad to have you, and thank you so much for joining today's episode.
No, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk with you, to connect with you. It's been a long time, so I'm excited to be here.
hmm So let's start out this conversation with learning a little bit more about how you entered the nonprofit arena and what that looked like for you.
Sure. So I would say it goes as back as I would say my younger, like childhood years, growing up where I grew up in the neighborhood, very impoverished. Luckily both my parents worked and, I had a roof over my head, clothes on my back. But in the community I lived in, that wasn't always the case. You didn't always see kids and families and, full households. So I always wanted to give back in some way. The family I had, we always supported friends and family with housing or just meals. And then fast forward to my college or undergraduate college career. I began volunteering after I joined sorority organization and kind of fueling that passion a little bit more through the different volunteer works that I was doing. And I came across a graduate program in Florida, actually, which I didn't even know existed at the time. I didn't know that you can major in nonprofit in any aspect or capacity. So I just was excited and I jumped on, that degree program. And I can say now that was back in 2014 when I graduated. And happy to say I'm still in the sector, working and just loving what I do, just giving back.
Yay! Um, So as Addie and I met, when if there was a mixer at or an event at the University of Central Florida. I remember seeing the advertisement for alumni and all to kind of come out and meet other nonprofit professionals, and I was like, hey, why not, sort of thing. And I honestly didn't know what I was like getting into, but I'm like, you say nonprofit, I'm there. So I remember going to the event, and then they were doing the speed mixers and the round tables, and then we ended up at a table together. And then I think, and I vaguely remember the speaker at the table wasn't there yet or something, and somehow I don't know if I ended up sharing kind of like my background in nonprofit. I don't remember what happened, but we ended up connecting um, during that time, and it was just absolutely amazing. And then from there, you being able to come over to Love Our Youth and volunteer. I remember starting out in programs and then going into grants, and then now you're in grants. Like it was, yeah, it very special times. And then even just thinking about one, just being able to see your career journey from that point forward to now, and then also see our organization's growth, because at that time we were 100% volunteer led. So when I'm for those of you listening, when I'm sharing these stories, I get it. When you're it kind of it's your board and volunteers that's really keeping your organization operating. We were there. Addie was one of those volunteers that came in and helped us move the organization to where it is today. So this conversation, that's why it's that special to me. She wrote one of our first grants, one of our first government grants that we received, and to this day that we continue to have, in addition to other grants that we now have. And I really, really appreciate you. I know I'm taking up the first half of the show, but it means so much, Addie, the foundation that you built for us to help us become the organization that we are today. So that's why this episode, being able to sit down and kind of talk about where you are in your journey now and what tips you have for organization, means so much to me, because you and I have personally connected and worked together, and seen the growth not only personally but also professionally in other avenues of whether it's the organization and so forth. So yes, so Have to give you your flowers, girl. I appreciate you and so glad that you came on today.
Well, I appreciate that. Since we're giving flowers, I do have to return because during that alumni connection that ECF hosted, I did meet Lashina, as she mentioned. And at the time, I was fresh out of graduation and looking for opportunities to volunteer, just connect with different folks in the sector. And like she said, we sort of got to talking, and she told me about the organization that she was starting. So, I was eager to join and excited to be a part of it. And I really attest everything that I learned in the beginning stages to Lashina, and just taking a chance on me to kind of grow and help me develop my nonprofit muscles, I would say. So I really owe all of my success to you. And I just want to say thank you for
Oh,
everything you've helped me and kind of provided for me and just laid the groundwork for me moving forward. So I'm so happy to see the success that you all have achieved. And
oh.
I want to say thank you and give you your flowers as well.
Oh, you gonna have me crying on here, but definitely, I definitely appreciate it. I mean, y'all, like we were putting in, and we still, put it to work. But I'm just saying the type of work. I remember we were meeting in wherever had a spot in an area. We were meeting there, right, to kind of move the mission forward and continue to impact our youth. And I remember, and I don't know if you remember, Addie, but I remember every moment. I remember from when we were in the programmatic, when you were doing programs, and you were like, we had that conversation, and kind of the grant space. I'm like, okay, you want to write grants? Let's go. So I'm so glad that the experience was mutually beneficial. And yeah, so I'm excited about today's conversation. So let's catch up. Tell me about what's been happening since then, your experience in the grant realm, some tips and tricks that you might have for those tuning in. Yeah, let's catch up. What's been happening?
Great. So, yes, after I volunteered, and I will say for anyone who's listening, who's sort of in those beginning stages of wanting to get in the sector and they're not really getting much traction, I would say my biggest thing is don't give up. It took me 4 years to break into the field, and that's through volunteering with Ashina and just kind of stretching my nonprofit muscles in any way that I could. So I actually got hired with a federal FQHC, excuse me, which is a federally qualified health center, and they're a nonprofit health center that helps provide medical services to folks who don't have insurance. So I got hired on as their grant writer there. They're based out of Florida. Their organization is called True Health, and they're still open and functioning to this day. But it was through that opportunity that I was able to write more proposals and kind of understand grant writing in a different lens, because it was such a niche program and focus that I was used to, because Love Our Youth kind of focuses on youth development and all these
Mm-hmm.
things. So this was, an opportunity to challenge myself. So I was there for a few years, and from there, I actually got hired. And I would say LinkedIn is also a great tool to use.
Come on,
I came
LinkedIn.
Yes, I came across the organization that I work with now, which is Share Our Strength, and I work under their No Kid Hungry campaign, which is a program that helps to combat childhood hunger. So I'm actually on the other spectrum of grant management, where I administer the grants now. So I'm reading proposals, reviewing budgets, and all this other stuff. So it's cool to be on each spectrum, each end of the spectrum, excuse me, in that sense, and kind of understand or empathize with grant writers, because it is a very demanding, laborious role to do, but it's needed because nonprofits, we don't operate off of thank yous and handshakes. We actually do these
Mm-hmm.
funds, and having been on this end of the spectrum, I also, get to help support some of these organizations that are doing a lot of great work on the ground and being able to deliver some funds in that way. So it's been a rewarding path so far. I'm excited to see where I continue to move forward on it. But yeah, that's where I am today.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. And just to kind of see, like, I mean, going into the field, especially like grant writing and so forth, is not easy. But the fact that you really honed in on like, this is what I'm gonna do, and go from into grant writing, and now in a position of where you're able to review and work in more of a funder lens, is just absolutely amazing. So what tips, and we this could be within the grant writing space, or even as now working from the funder lens, what tips do you have for organizations when it comes to preparing their proposals, and particularly their programs, being able to demonstrate the impact and demonstrate their programs through words so that funders want to invest in what they're doing?
I will say that first, kind of debunk a few myths for everyone who's writing grants. I know it's easy, and you get so caught up in wanting to apply for every grant under the spectrum that you start tailoring your proposals and evidently your programs to what funders are looking for. And I would say, please refrain from doing that as much as you can. At the end of the day, your program should be what you envision for your organization and the direction that you want it to go. So really think about your program first and kind of backtrack from there, and look for funders that can support the vision and the mission that you set out for yourself for the program. So in that aspect, I'll say stay true to your core and your values and your mission first, and then look for funding opportunities that will help elevate and support those things. I always recommend a boilerplate, and for folks who don't know what
Mm-hmm.
the term is, basically sort of a deck, I would say, of cards that you have handies for the when you apply for grants. You have sort of these sort of things to help you apply and make things a lot more efficient for you. So typically boilerplates will include like your mission statement, your program need, kind of the problem you're solving, what your budget is to help operate that program, um, kind of what your methodology is for why this is proven to work, why your program is proven to lead to success, and then any other partners that you're planning to leverage to help make the program possible. And if you haven't leveraged any other partners, I would say that's definitely a funder's green flag, I guess we can say.
Mm-hmm.
Utilizing other resources, that you're not just relying on these funds to make your program happen, that you thought about folks who are already in these communities that you're trying to target, who are kind of doing the same mission, or trying to combat the same problem in a different scope or a different aspect, and that you all are collaborating to sort of make it happen. So, say collaboration is a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Another tip I would say is budget. People tend to throw budgets together and just throw out random numbers to see what you can get.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, and depending on the funder, that could work, because there's millions of grants out there, millions of dollars to be awarded. But I would really say go back to the program and really think about what would be the most efficient. Do your research in terms of what the needs are, how you're evaluating things. That's another big thing. And because funders want to see the return on investment, they want to see how their investment kind of help support your program and the impact that it made. So really think through these pieces as you're putting your programs together and your proposals.
You just dropped all these nuggets at once. We're gonna go back to some. That was awesome. Love it. Okay, so we got the first one, which is stay true to your organization's mission. And I'm so glad that you talked about that, because sometimes organizations can get caught in, just because a grant came out, they're applying for it, and it might not necessarily align with what you do. And I will tell you, the frustration once you're awarded that grant that you're going to go through, I don't think it's going to be worth any dollar for you going through that and shifting from your mission. Just because it's not true to you, you end up having to add so much other layers on to meet that funder's requirement, and losing who you as an organization is in the midst of it. So I love that you talked about that. the next thing you talked about was the boilerplate. And baby, because you set up our first boilerplate for us at Love Our Youth, and we are using that to this day. Like, we went, of course, as we continue to grow, we assess it every year. We go back to our boilerplate, what changed, any of our winning proposals, pulling some of that language back into the new boilerplate to make sure that, like, if it worked, okay, let's keep that, kind of thing. So yes, having a boilerplate for your organization, no matter what your size is, I definitely can echo that is crucial, especially if your organization starting out. Get you a boilerplate now. That will set you up for success for years to come. So I love that you talked about that, because we still have ours going, rocking and rolling, but you set that foundation with us here, so that we can continuously have our boilerplate, and we go back to it and we reference it and we use it when we're applying for grants. And then also it helps when if we're changing grant writers. I have multiple people writing grants, we're all speaking the same language. So that's absolutely wonderful. Partnership and collaboration, being able to partner, not doing it alone. I love that you talked about that, because sometimes we try to sit in our corners and just do everything alone, forgetting the importance of bringing others who have specialties alongside. So you might be applying for a grant, let's say, just because I'm always in the youth program, we're applying for a camp in the summer, but there's an opportunity where we can be able to infuse the mental health component, which we've been wanting to do for years. If that's not our specialty, and there's another organization that specializes in youth mental health, or mental health, or whichever, why don't we just call them up and see how we can collaborate to make this opportunity? Our strength is providing the program. Your strength is providing the mental health component for the youth. Come on, let's work together, kind of thing. So I love that you talked about that. Budget. I told you all these nuggets you dropped, and I called everyone as you were dropping them.
Like, oh wait, I did see that.
Yeah, you said that. I was catching them as you were dropping them. You talked about budget, the importance of your budget, and not just throwing it together. And there are a lot of funders, even though there's some that may not like go back and kind of analyze your budget to a T, there's still some that will.
Yeah.
If you said you're going to do this, they're going to go back to your budget, and some even ask for receipts. We want the receipts. We want all of this to make sure what you said is going to happen, and you're not deviating from that. So you want to be as accurate as possible in that budget process. And then you also talked about the importance of evaluation, impact, being able to show the return on investment for your funder, or your donor, or your investor. Really, it's investing is what the donors are doing. They're investing in your mission, investing in the impact that you all are having in the community. So they want to know, like, in exchange for this investment, what are we going to see? What is the impact that's going to be created as a part of it? Who lives are going to be better off because we invested in this program that you shared? So I caught those nuggets. I was listening. Yes, I caught them. You were dropping them. I was picking them up. I'm like, okay, yes.
And it's funny, as you were saying all of that, I thought of like one or two more, if that's okay for me to share.
Yeah.
I think also too is, if you're a new organization or you're a nonprofit that doesn't know where to start, where to begin, I would say look at what other people aren't doing and try to fill gaps in that way. Because we're always looking for innovation as funders. We're always looking for new and fresh ideas, communities that haven't been tapped into yet. We're always looking for organizations on the ground who are filling these gaps and disparities. So I would say kind of do your research also of the landscape of nonprofits and organization, and see where you might be able to fill in some holes in that sense.
I love that. And even with, because I was just thinking, and for some that might look different. That might be doing a needs assessment. Recently, our organization, we did a asset assessment. We looked at all the value that was around us within the community, because oftentimes we look at the needs, but don't see, oh, this is the good part of what's happening around us, and how can we pull these things together. So we did some asset mapping and looking at, okay, all of this is here, but you know what's missing that can glue this all together? And for us, it was teen programming. In our community, we realized that there wasn't as much teen programs, but there's so much assets around to support teens and what they're doing. So then that's how that kind of came about. So doing a needs assessment or asset mapping within your within your community to see what those gaps are that will put you kind of ahead, because instead of you competing with another organization and what they're doing, you're really able to kind of go in and fill the needs and those areas that the community needs. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and I love how you framed it as like asset mapping. That's something
Hmm.
that our organization is trying to look towards too. They call it strength based framing. So it's
Hmm.
like looking at the needs and using all of these buzzwords to kind of associate communities as like disenfranchised or disproportionately affected or all of these things. What about these communities make them great? What makes them positive, unique? And then coming into those communities and wondering how we can further elevate that, or like you said, identifying those.
Hmm.
So I love that.
Yes. Love it. Any other things that you want to share?
Um, as a funder now on the other end of this,
Okay. Yep. Yep.
watching this don't come for me, but this is just my experiences. Um, as a cool thing that I would say at my organization is I get to help support the way that we sort of vet our applicants and who applies for our grants. And so that's constantly revising our applications, kind of doing research on what access folks have to be able to apply. A lot of organizations can't afford grant writers. So a lot of the time it's their staff or their volunteers writing these grants. So funders, I would definitely encourage you all to kind of think of organizations in that sense where they may not have capacity to write these stellar proposals or fill out a 30-page, application, but that doesn't mean it isn't worth having a conversation or trying to connect with them in ways that they can, meet their needs instead of them meeting our needs. So I would
Hmm.
definitely say tailor your grant opportunities to the communities that you serve, even if it's having a verbal conversation instead of a written application, verbal reporting, that sort of thing. This year, we've implemented a rubric to help with our equity priorities. So now we're giving everyone a fair chance to apply and making decisions consistently across all of the applications we receive. So this is just our way of trying to meet folks where they're at, given, sometimes staffing is always an issue and resources are scarce. So yeah, I would definitely say meet the needs of the people.
Ooh, I love that. And I spent some time in funding as well. And you talking about tailoring it to the community that you serve and those organizations within the community said that that's so crucial. Especially because you're right, the capacity of the organization, they might do an amazing job at the work in the lives that they're touching. But just when it comes to that area, they might just need a little, help or support or being able to speak the lingo, because there is a lingo when it comes to grant writing and all of that. There's a language behind it that everyone doesn't have. So being able to tailor that, I love that you mentioned that. And I've seen some funders doing just that. Like they might say, hey, you can choose either write it or do a video, like they're giving those type of options now. And I love that, and I love that you mentioned that as well. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I
And
was.
I can hear, uh-huh,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
and I can hear everyone that's tuning in cheering too, like yes, do that. Yes, yes.
Because as
Because
I have a unique position where like I've been on both ends, so like I understand the trusses or like the hardships of a grant writer, but also
hmm.
understanding that we are intermediary organizations. So for folks who don't know that term, we also have corporate partners and funders that we have to answer to. So they
Hmm.
donate funds to us, and it's our responsibility that we're choosing sponsors in a way that aligns with kind of our shared goals and outcomes with those corporate partners. So I say all that to say, be willing to work with the sponsors that you have and understand who your demographic is. We've translated a lot of our materials in Spanish now because a lot of the communities impact are Spanish speaking.
Mm.
We don't ever want anyone to feel like they can't apply because they can't understand the language or, you know, want that to be a roadblock in any way. So
I love that you all are doing that, because so often it'll be told to organizations that you really need to meet the community needs, but then also as funders thinking about how are we, or how are funders, how are we meeting the community needs? The same thing we're saying to those that we fund, you need to meet the community needs, but how are we meeting those nonprofits that serve our community needs as well? And you all translating and doing that just says like a lot to the type of work and considerations that you all are taking as a part of your funding process. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a great organization to be a part of. I can't complain. I've been blessed and very, very grateful. I've been stretched in so many ways. So it's exciting to be leveraged in this way and be able to support and give back. I just thought of something.
Mm-hmm.
It's so funny.
What you got?
Um, as a grant writer, there have been so many times where like I'm writing applications and in the middle of writing I'm like second guessing what I'm saying
Mm-hmm.
because I want to sound as politically correct and professional as possible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um but this is something more for funders where like I said, just piggybacking off of like the
Yeah.
lack of resources and capacity, you have to understand that the voices that you're hearing from are actually people doing this work that needs to be accomplished, and it's not pretty, and we need to give more credit to these organizations who are on the ground. Um, I think of everyone working, combating the LA wildfires, and our
Mm-hmm.
organizations out there providing resources. And it's hard to be politically correct when your whole world is literally burning and you're trying.
Mm.
And so I would say just be mindful of the landscape and give folks a chance
Mm.
to really articulate or just kind of just express what they need from their point of view or their perspective.
Wow. That's a really good point, because a lot of the nonprofits, when they're out in the community, like you said, literally um putting out fires or these different emergencies, or that person who doesn't have a home tonight, what am I going to do, or trying to navigate some of those. And even no matter, even I would say small mid-sized organizations, everyone's involved, because we're all wrapping our arms around to love and try to support whatever this emergency initiative is going on. And
Right.
yes, that does make it harder when it's trying to, like, when you want to call up someone or a donor or someone, like, hey, look, these groups of people don't have somewhere to sleep tonight. They've been, whichever. It's hard to articulate the background and everything else or around that when those things are happening. So I love that you shared that.
Mhm.
And sometimes it might even be on the application, literally putting, instead of this one long answer question, one question with the long answer being expected, literally putting, what do you want to see there, asking the direct question as to, like, boom, 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 so that anybody literally could just fill that out, versus trying to figure out what else do they want to know from this one question.
Right.
So making that application clear as well. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. For man, you dropped them all, and you dropped them all very early, all the nuggets. So I'm so glad we were able to take some time and talk through it and catch up as well. How can someone tuning in, if they want to connect with you or your organization, whichever, how can they learn more?
I would say the easiest way is through my email or
Mhm,
LinkedIn. My
mhm.
email is adlyn.maldonado@gmail.com. My LinkedIn is Adlyn Maldonado as well. If you want to learn more about the organization and the campaign that I work for, visit the website at nokidhungry.org. There's a lot of resources. You can donate, find out how you can get involved, find out the work that we've been doing. So, yeah, happy to connect with anyone.
Awesome. Well, Addie, thank you so much for coming on. It was such a wonderful conversation, and I'm so glad that we were able to catch up. And hopefully, we can have more conversations like these. This is only the beginning of reconnecting. So, thank you so much for coming on today.
Well, thank you for having me. I had such a great time. It was good talking to you.
Of course. All right, everyone. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next Nonprofit Enthusiast Live. Bye, everyone.